let's navigate to the service directory. Now, when we come in here, we'll see that we have a great overview of exactly where we're at with different states of services and their associated teams and who's on call. And we can actually see, the state of our services. And also dig in, understand exactly what's going on. They also have a great export functionality, so we can export that data and understand exactly places for improvement from a macro level in our organizations. Now, taking a deeper dive, we can see that there are some teams who are already doing a great job. Looking at making sure that their teams and services are ready to go. However, if we take a little further deep dive, we recognize there's some teams with opportunities. So, not only within each of these, we have the ability to understand, are we prepared? Do we have our alert groupings set up? We could actually automatically launch out here and change those behaviors. Things like add another escalation policy, alert grouping, and all the other potential options in the service standards. These are the kind of things that really truly empower teams to take action and be better prepared for incident response. So one of the things you might think about here is, how do I roll out service standards? As we know, change sometimes requires a slow rollout or a strategy. So one of the things that we've enabled here is the ability to go into settings. You can actually create visibility toggles of who can see the service standards as they appear in the service directory. You can make it so that admins only, so you can have kind of a more gradual rollout to understand exactly the state of affairs. Everyone, so every user in the account, or no one at all. So we remove that visibility. You can also change the description so you understand exactly what these things mean. You can create, remove them altogether, as well as apply to specific services. You can do all services or selected services, and included regular expression to target specific services. This is really powerful when you think about getting buy-in and alignment and scaling your service standards and service ownership across your organization. All right, so taking a step back, let's just talk about what exactly services are. This reference here actually is looking at our API documentation, and I love this definition because it calls out services represents an entity you monitor, such as a web service, email service, or database service. It is a container for related incidents that escalates with escalation policies. A service is the focal point for incident management, and services specify the configuration, the behavior incidents triggered for them. So understanding this concept, it's the area that you provide configuration and you truly leverage PagerDuty. You can see why it's so important and why to provide the guidance of service standards. So let's take a little deep dive into exactly what service standards are and how they help your team perform better. So coming back to our service directory and expanding the sidebar view around exactly what service standards are, let's dive deeply into each of the standards. So service has a description. One of the challenges we have when a problem occurs is understanding exactly what we're looking at. This incentive to provide a description allows those responders to understand in real time what the problem area is that they're looking at. There could be many services, and understanding where that problem is a huge help. And doing these small tasks are things that add up. The same thing dropping into alert grouping. We can get overwhelmed with alerts and information coming to our system, and to truly empower our responders, you want to group those alerts and those into a centralized place that you understand the full context. And similarly, if you end up only setting high urgency and you have no granularity between a real problem versus a minor nuisance, you're not going to have the discrepancy to actually empower your teams to work on those high urgency incidents. So don't just make everything high urgency, make it have some distinction there. Also, services at least one business service dependency. We know it's important to communicate during incidents and understanding what is the actual customer impact. And the business services are a great way to represent that. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we go into the service graph portion of this demo, but it's a great setup to understand that we want to provide incentive to align our technical services to those business services that actually impact our customers. In the same way, service has at least one technical service dependency. As we know, and again, we'll reference this in our service graph portion of this demo, technical services are the things that allow us to understand the interconnected dependencies of potential areas to investigate. And also if any other teams are working on similar problems, and being able to see that larger context. And further, we also want to recognize that it's important to have two or more unique levels. We don't want to just have one person responsible, and if that doesn't get hit, that person doesn't respond, we don't have someone helping us. So making sure that we have those two or more unique levels. Similarly, we want you to leverage our rich add-ons like Slack, etc., so you can empower that response in complementary tools. And kind of getting down to the bottom of the list here, service is at least one change integration. As we know, a lot of incidents occur because a change has occurred in our software infrastructure, and without that, that's oftentimes the easiest thing to recognize why an incident or problem occurred. So having those flow into our system also empower responders. Finally, leveraging the richness of our API integrations rather than just maybe an email integration endpoint allows us to get that full context and leverage those deep integrations that PagerDuty has built up over time. So I hope this gives you a little bit more context of the power of service standards, and moving from we've got all these great tools in PagerDuty, we want to empower you to actually use them and make your teams better holistically. It's a really exciting advancement of thinking about PagerDuty best practice, as we've seen customers who leverage these have better results over time, driving down MTTA, MTTR, and overall the health of our services as well as our teams in the PagerDuty the ecosystem and our customers that use this. So that concludes this portion of the service standards. Let's jump into how Service Graph is complementary. So now that we've taken a chance to go over exactly what service standards are and how they both empower your teams and your overall organization to be better equipped leveraging PagerDuty, let's take a deep dive into the service graph and recognize how that's a very complementary aspect. So, in taking this broader perspective, this gives you a great overview of exactly the kind of orientation of the service architecture that you are currently leveraging within PagerDuty. Kind of diving in a little bit here and understanding exactly what these components are, we see that we have the dynamics of both technical services, which are just in the circular elements here, and then we also have the interconnected business services. So this gives you great context when understanding when a problem occurs, what's actually impacting from a business and customer perspective. So again, we take a step back and think about those business dependencies setup that we talked about in service standards, as well as those technical dependencies. We both have the means to understand customer impact, as well as the technical interconnectedness and that incident investigation. And with that, and understanding from a configuration perspective, your layout and service architecture, this also gives you kind of an overview to understand where current problems lie and to take a deep dive in. So from here, we can actually dive in exactly to a business service and recognize any associated open instance. So this gives you kind of more context and definition of those problems and incidents currently occurring within these business services. So let's dive over to the incident page. Similarly now, for the incident view, we now have the visibility to understand exactly what those potential dependencies are and investigating potential other areas of problems and digging in here. and who I could potentially leverage to be included as part of this incident response process. We can also, from the same perspective, I wasn't looking at the service graph before, take the reversed view and understand, okay, where does this sit in the overall world of problems that I have? Are there any other technical services that are currently seeing issues? So this gives me great understanding that, other folks to reach out to and how I can ask for help and kind of dig into surface areas to investigate that cause of the current incident. So with that being said, taking the overview of service standards and service graph as a complementary product pairing, we both have the ability to have that time to set up and configure your account and your services and your team so they're optimized to use PagerDuty, and then truly empower them when a problem occurs. So you can connect and truly reduce the cost of downtime, which is what we're all here for.